I mean, Bernie Sanders is a self-declared socialist. Hillary Clinton is a self-declared neoliberal corporatist. I don't think she'd add the corporatist part, but she is what she is. Donald Trump is a fascist. It's just a label, but it carries with it tremendous meaning. And that's why he is so popular among the Republicans. Every Republican in America, by definition, by the fact that they adhere to the Republican Party, is declaring himself or herself to be an American fascist. There's no argument here. They wouldn't admit it, but that's...
As in Germany, the Americans of the 30s saw Jews as a vague but dangerous threat, undermining the country. A Gallup poll in 1942 showed 1 in 6 Americans thought Hitler was doing the right thing to the Jews, and 1 in 5 considered Jews a, quote, menace. This was, by the way, a higher number than those who considered Germans a menace. In 1942, 12% of Americans supported a widespread campaign against Jews in America. No one considered fascism marginal. It was popular. A book in 1941 reported that over 100 fascist organizations had formed in the United States since 1933. One popular radio preacher, Catholic Reverend Charles Coughlin, had the most popular radio show in America next to Roosevelt's Fireside Chats. He spoke glowingly about the Nazis, often quoting propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels, and admired the German quest for, quote, full employment and racial purity. Also, in before someone points out, yes, I know he was born in Canada. I think when we tell the story of the rise of fascism in this period, we overlook that fascism had a growing fan base in a lot of Western countries. In my country of Canada, there was also a depression and a desire to bring back order and prosperity. Many Canadians saw Mussolini and Hitler as onto something. Fascist ideas were also popular in America. High-profile American celebrities like Henry Ford and Charles Lindbergh admired what Hitler was doing in Germany.
Fascism is ultranationalism, where the nation is defined in terms of racial, ethnic, religious, or perhaps cultural identity. Rallies where the leader is one with his supporters, dividing people into the enemy versus the leader's supporters.
I think, you know what? I think we're the elites. They're not the elites. And yes, by the way, they are trying to take away our history and our heritage. You see that.
Richard Nixon ran a law and order campaign, misrepresenting peaceful protests as riots and raising panic about rising crime.
This is a nation of laws, and as Abraham Lincoln has said, no one is above the law, no one is below the law, and we're going to enforce the law, and Americans should remember that if we're going to have law.
Mr. Trump ran a campaign raising panic about a completely fictional wave of rising crime.
Law and order must be restored.
February 20th, 1939. Just months before Hitler invades Poland and ignites the deadliest war in history, thousands of Nazis gather for a rally at an indoor arena. But this isn't Nuremberg or Berlin. This is Madison Square Garden in New York City.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Fritz Kuhn.
Kuhn then went on to deliver a very, very predictable and very, very typical National Socialist stump speech about racism and the Jewish conspiracy and the communists and how everybody's an enemy and everybody has to be alike.
We, the German-American Bund, organized as American citizens with American ideals and determined to protect ourselves, our homes, our wives and children against the slimy conspirators and the parasite hand of Jewish communism in our schools, our universities, our very homes.
Have you seen this symbol at a Trump rally recently? It's a sign for a popular online conspiracy theory that the deep state is working to bring down Trump. It's not a million miles away from Viktor Orbán's wild campaigns against a global Jewish conspiracy.
Nagy testű ragadozók úszkálnak a vízben. Ez így Soros György határokon átnyúló birodalma, rengeteg pénzzel, és nemzetközi nehéz tüzérség.
Streams of the parties haven't addressed, which is the hollowing out of an awful lot of mostly blue-collar jobs across the country over the last 20, 30 years, the flattening of living standards over an extended period, which the traditional parties and the mainstreams have had very little to say about. And Sanders and Trump have picked up on the problems that this has caused for a large number of people. And
further characteristics are based on the idea that dissent and diversity are bad, and they weaken discourse and society. Almost by definition, Eco says that fascism is racist, or at the very least, anti-diversity. Trump's rampant xenophobia, within which he proposes deporting 11 million immigrants and blocking entry to the US for Muslims, is an open appeal to extreme nationalism. In his presidential announcement speech, Trump latched onto another important fascist quality. Enemies of the state are defined as being strong and needlessly wealthy. Trump's lack of ideological direction suggests that a vocal portion of the US public is calling for a fascist candidate, and Trump has simply filled that role. The scariest thought isn't that Trump is a fascist, but that American voters want one.
Team says that his campaign slogan, "Make America Great Again," fits into the pattern of early 20th century European fascism that painted an image of a country in demise and that emphasized the urgency of needing to bring the country back to a former glory. Alarmingly, this is not the only sign that Trump's presidency marks a return to fascism. In January 2017, Trump issued an executive order banning nationals from 7 Muslim countries from entering the US. This controversial order was compared by political journalist John White to Nazi policies that demonized Jews and other minorities. Even Trump's leadership style is similar to that of one Adolf Hitler, that Europe is also experiencing a second wave of fascism. He says, "The toxic combination of the most prolonged period of economic stagnation and the worst refugee crisis since the end of the Second World War has seen the far right surging." These conditions may explain the shocking rise of right-wing populism in Europe, where proto-fascist parties such as France's National Front, Austria's Anti-Islam Freedom Party and Germany's Alternative for Germany are poised for success.
The Great Chinese Famine under Mao Zedong. 36 million people starved to death. The Holodomor famine in Soviet Ukraine. Between 7 to 10 million dead after food was withheld from them. Communism is messed up.
Because fascism, regardless of nation or time or leader, is a reaction against the left. It's a frustration with liberalism. It's a rejection of socialism and communism and Marxism and feminism and globalism and perceived weakness. It's a reactionary movement.
Fascism is the idea that the group is more important than the individual.
An authoritarian and nationalistic right-wing system of government and social organization.
Now I will tell you what the actual characteristics of fascism are. Nationalism, a hatred of international finance, a resurrection of the golden age of one's country, the ideal of heroism, the promotion of virtue ethics, and the recognition of the spiritual over the material. If these things make me a fascist, then so is every patriotic American a fascist. What patriotic American does not love his country? What patriotic American does not loathe the devastation wrought on our economy by international finance? What patriotic American does not hold dear the colonial revolutionaries, the founding fathers, the framers of the Constitution from our golden age? What patriotic American does not hold in high esteem our military heroes? What patriotic American does not believe in honor, courage, commitment, sacrifice, duty? What patriotic American does not believe that God and country come before money? A belief in order, an appreciation of history, opposition to communism and internationalism, respect for the family and the church? Is it fascistic to want to end the financial crisis and the war on drugs, or to prohibit special interests from controlling our politicians? Is it fascistic to want our military to act in America's interests and not in the interest of Israel or the United Nations? Is it fascistic to want our Constitution and Bill of Rights restored, along with due process, the right against warrantless search and seizure, the right to bear arms, the right to freedom of speech and association? Is it fascistic to hate corruption and the stranglehold of finance, to preach resistance to consumerism and decadence, to fight for the welfare of our countrymen and the sanctity of our soil?
This great meeting is gathered here tonight to hear the policy and faith of fascism.
We do not propose dictatorship, but we do propose a drastic revision of the parliamentary machine in order that the will of the people may be carried out.
Fascism, above all, rests upon teamwork, the ability to pull together, the power to subordinate every interest of section or individual to the nation as a whole. And this nation again and again in the great hours of its faith has swept aside convention, has swept aside the little men of talk and of delay, and has decided to follow men and women who say we go forward to action, that who dare follow us in this hour. That is the promise of the mighty movement of Britain. And I claim that in the ranks of our blessed legions, march the mighty ghost of England's past, and their strong arms around us, and their voices echo down the ages, saying onward. We say this England is not finished. We say that England is not dead. We say, and I ask you to say with us, lift up your voices in this great meeting in the heart of England. Send to all the world a message. England lives and marches on.